Yeah, I'm sitting here with my friend Fred Hendrick. Did I say it right?
No, Henrich.
Henrich. And I've known Fred for several years, mostly through the Romero troupe, but through other things. Where did you and I meet, Fred? Remember?
We were introduced by Nancy Peters, who brought you to Occupy Denver Book Club one time. And then after that, we went over to, what's the name of that group? Warm Cookies for the Revolution.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's when we first met.
Wow. And we've spent a lot of time together doing different things like the theater troupe and going to different political things and just having coffee and talking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So Fred, tell us where are you living right now?
I live in the house of my good friend Joe, who I've known for about 10 years. And I first met at Bardo Coffee House. And when I was finishing up my process serving business, which I did, that was probably the only process server I ever worked by riding the bus. But when when I would have to go out of town, he would drag me, and he thought that was the most. And so that's how we got to be good friends. And then there was also a small clique of people that met at Barbados that used to get together and do various things.
So Fred, how did you you were living someplace else and then you ended up here. Tell us about that.
Well, for 40 years or more, I lived in the same apartment in just off South Broadway in this neighborhood here. And it was owned originally by the father of two friends of mine, and then the father passed, and the building went to the two friends. And they were benevolent landlords for years and years, but finally they got too old, and just like I got old, and they didn't want to be landlords anymore. They said they weren't really up to maintaining it, so they sold the building, and these real estate people bought it, and they made everybody sign leases, and in months they sold it again, and the second set of new owners, they let all the leases run out, and then they kicked everybody out and did a cosmetic remodel, and they're trying to sell them as condos right now.
So this place you were paying like what, $600 a month rent, something like that.
That's about what it was. When I first moved in, the rent was $100 a month, and I went to buy a car on time, and they asked me how much my rent was, and I said, well, $100 a month, and they started laughing at me, but they did do the deal, and I got the car. I was able to buy the car.
How much are those places selling for now?
Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah, they're probably at least $700,000 or something, right?
Well, yeah, it's one story. I call them railroad apartments. It's 3 rooms, one after the other, and they're all about 12 by 12, plus the kitchen has a chunk out of it to be the bathroom. And they were built, as near as we can tell, around 1890, so there's no way you can really modernize them completely. They're just structurally inadequate.
But it's kind of gentrification then, pretty much.
Yeah, they as near as I can tell, they've sold 2 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did you end up here in Denver? You're from Buffalo originally, right?
Yeah, well, I was in Buffalo, and then when I got out of high school, I flunked out of college twice. I worked in the family business until it went out of business, and I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't imagine any future in Buffalo, and so, but I read about the hippies and the Summer of Love in San Francisco in Life magazine, I believe, and so I said, well, maybe that could be my future. So I went out to San Francisco, and I was never really equipped to be a hippie. There was not enough structure there. So I left there after about a year and a half, and I went to Pinos Altos, New Mexico, which was a couple hundred people outside of Silver City, New Mexico. And I was there for another year and a half, but it was, again, I couldn't find any structured thing to do there. So, and I had friends from Silver City who moved to Denver, so I came to Denver, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah, and what did you do for a living when you got here? How'd you get by?
How did I get, let's see. Well, I worked in lumber companies, again. I don't think I mentioned this. I'd done bartending in Buffalo, which, and the reason I did that was after the lumber company went away, I said, well, I like to drink. Maybe I should be a bartender. And also it was, I also had this problem of whether I wanted to try and make it in the straight world or to be an outsider. This was, when I first did it, this was before hippies, but I wanted to be a bohemian or a beatnik, even though I didn't know any of those people or what that life would really be like. So I always had this, I was always switching back and forth what I was trying to do.
What'd you do after like the bartending and working in the lumber stuff in Denver?
Well, I bartended up when I decided finally to leave. I bartended. Let's see, I had I had one full-time job I would do, and then I also worked in a bar in the basement of the auditorium where the symphony played, and they brought in all kinds of other acts. That was just a part-time thing. And then there was this old guy who bartended at the auditorium, and he told me that I was the only young guy that ever worked there that was polite to him. And so he put me in touch with the guys that ran the union, or they were real old guys like him, and they had a one-room office.
Bartenders union?
Yes, the bartenders union, which I had. My first full-time job was in a hotel, and that was so I had to join the union because the hotel was a union place.
And then you served papers, right?
Well, that didn't come till I'd been in Denver for quite a while, and then I was working in a lumber company, and I did one of my favorite things, which was to quit job without having anything lined up after that. So I had a friend who was an investigator for what did you call it? Public defenders. He was an investigator for them, and he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. Your work looks interesting." He says, "Well, I have a friend who has a private investigator business, and you could probably start tomorrow for him." And so he put me in touch with this guy, and the guy wanted me to send him a resume. Well, I didn't have any resume, and so I called up my friend again, and he called up the guy he'd recommended me to, and he said, "Fred isn't the kind of guy you ask for a resume." So he hired me. Well, that detective agency didn't have much detective business, but they had a ton of process serving stuff to do. And process serving is kind of like the poor stepchild of private investigation. So all these people, they were trying to be investigators, but they were starving to death, but I was doing well. And so finally I could see there was no future with this guy, so I went out on my own. And I was going to be, I thought the right thing to do was not to steal his accounts, but all the accounts I was servicing, I went to them, and I said, "I'll be leaving this agency. I want you to know." And they said, "Oh, well, we'll still use you. We don't care about that agency. You're the one we work with, and we like your work." So that's how I got on my own.
And you eventually quit driving, and you would deliver these papers on the bus or whatever.
Yeah, I did it for close to 30 years, which is way too long. You know, being in business for myself, I had to be self-motivating, and I lost that. So my car broke down on the road. It had to be towed, and the cops came, and I said, "It's not drivable. I got to get it towed." So they called the tow truck service that they used, and this service was way down in Castle Rock, and they towed my car down to Castle Rock. I didn't have enough money to get it out, plus it would need to be fixed to be driven home, or I'd have to have it towed back to Denver. So I just left it there. I didn't have a car anymore.
And you just let that go, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much what you did with your place. You didn't really sweat it. Like, you just moved out of your places.
Well, that was a little different. They just kicked everybody out to do their remodeling thing, and then try and sell them as condos, and so I didn't have any. once they got all done with that, and I'd been out of there for, I don't know, 9 months, a year, they sent me an email and said I could bid on my place.
Bid on your own place that you've been in
Right.
it 40 years. Yeah, wow. So, tell me about, you're known as being an activist here in Denver. Um, Tell us how you got started at that.
I got started in that by I heard about Occupy Denver, and that they were doing a 24-hour occupation down in front of the Capitol, and I said, well, I never did any political activism back when I was trying to be a hippie in San Francisco. I said I wasn't a selfless hippie. I was a sex, drugs, and rock and roll type hippie back then. But maybe I should find out what activism is all about. So one day I took the bus downtown, and at this point, the tent city there was on Lincoln Street, on the east side of Lincoln Street, between the sidewalk and the curb.
Down by the Capitol.
Yes, right in front of the Capitol. And there was a group there that ran a kitchen, and so I went up to them, and I gave them $5 to help cover their food costs, and they gave me a button. And then I'm looking around, and I said, boy, oh boy, these people look kind of grubby, which that'll happen to you living in a tent, living on the street. But I'd never experienced that, never been that close to unhoused people, so I didn't know. And I said, they kind of smell too. So I'm standing there taking it all in, though, and a young woman comes up to me with a clipboard, and she says, oh, well, I'm not with Occupy Denver, but I work with a different group, and I was wondering if you would like to work with us. And I was excited about the whole thing, so I said, yeah, sure. Which I hadn't intended to do till she came up. And so she took all my information down till she wanted to know what my email was. And I said, I don't have a computer. I said, you'll have to call me on the phone if you want to get in touch with me. And she said, oh, okay. And so I went home. She called me that night. And then the next night, another young woman called me. And the night after that, a third young woman called me. And I thought, gee, this hasn't happened to me in a long time. And I said, who are you kidding? This never happened to you before. And so that was, I can't even remember. Colorado Something Coalition was the name of this group.
The Progressive Coalition.
Colorado Progressive Coalition. So I went out to their office, and the very next week after I'd been recruited, we did a 5-day protest against this bank. I can't think of the name of it now. And one of the large national banks. Wells Fargo, it was. And every day we did a different thing. And the last day, I think it's their main office in Denver. It's down at Broadway and about 18. And we had a truck come in and bring a whole set of living room furniture in and put it on the sidewalk in front. We all went in and sat in the furniture, like it was supposed to be like we'd just been evicted. That's what we were doing, and this was set up beforehand by it was set up between one of the managers of the Progressive Coalition and a detective or a lieutenant in the Denver police force, and they agreed that the cops would do the thing, come up and tell you, we're going to warn you 3 times to leave here, and if you don't leave, then we'll arrest you for trespassing. They said, so the manager of Progressive Coalition, he said, who wants to get arrested? I said, oh, I better get arrested. If we're going to do this, better go all the way. And so there was about 6 of us that were planning to be arrested. But then right before the cops come to give us our 3 warnings, the manager comes up and he said, well, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, because we already have a win here, because they closed the bank down for the rest of the day. And we consider that a win. And so I still wanted to do it, but everybody else chickened out alone. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to do it alone. Plus, if I got arrested, then somebody would have to stay up all night and be ready to send people to bail me out if they'd let me go in the middle of the night. And I said, man, I don't know if I want to do that. So I didn't get arrested there.
So you went from being not political active at all to being almost getting arrested over, civil disobedience. How did that feel?
How did that feel doing it?
Yeah, how did you feel about being an activist? And
I said, oh boy, this is great. I should have been doing this my whole adult life.
Can you put a name on that feeling?
No. Offhand, no.
Yeah.
But it felt really good. Now I still have it. It's not quite as strong as it used to be, but I still have it.
So, around this neighborhood that we're in right now, you have several offices. Is that true?
Well, yes, I have a block and a half north and 3 blocks west to Lincoln is Branch Library, which I've been going to for ever since 40 years, I guess, ever since I've been in this neighborhood. And the way it used to be set up in one corner, they had 2 easy chairs, and not too many people used them, so I used to regularly, every day, I would go sit there. And there were a ton of people that would come into the library that I knew because I'd been in the neighborhood so long, and so they were always coming up to me and talking to me, and finally one of the librarians said, well, that corner is Fred's office. And so she took a piece of paper and wrote Fred's office on it. And I would come and sit down there, and she'd come up and tape it to the wall behind me.
And you have an office at the coffee shop?
Yeah.
And at some of the restaurants and bars around town too? Close by?
Well, a little bit. I have just one restaurant and one bar, because that's all I need really.
Yeah.
I shouldn't go in the bar very much.
And everybody like knows you at all these places, right? It's
Well,
pretty...
yeah, right. Everybody, and like the librarians come into the bar for lunch, so you know it's kind of, and a lot of people come into the coffee shop from other places. So
yeah, I've gone into some of these places and told them I was looking for Fred, and everybody knows where Fred is and who Fred is and what he's doing. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's nice. And in the coffee shop too. Maybe, I don't know, this is maybe a year after I'd started doing the activism. I started working with Occupy Denver. And then there were a lot of people that were, or not a lot, but there were a certain amount of people that were working with Occupy Denver and also working with Colorado Progressive Coalition. And so we formed a separate group to try and fight I can't think of words again.
Well, you were fighting capitalism, that's for sure.
When you kick people out of their houses.
Evictions?
Evictions, yeah.
You were fighting evictions, yeah.
What was it? Colorado Progressive Eviction thing or something. I can't even remember the name of it.
Yeah.
But we went up in the foothills to try and stop an eviction there. And we read on the county sheriff's website that when they would do an eviction, they would send out one deputy to oversee the eviction. And so that's what we were expecting. And they only did it 1 or 2 days a week, so we knew when they would be coming. And so we were up, and this was in the middle of the woods. It was just the one house. There were no houses.
And you're up there trying to prevent the eviction.
Yeah, and we were there. We were gonna. Well, there was a kind of a loop driveway off the road to get to this house, and there were fallen trees all over the place. So we dragged all these trees out and blocked the two entrances. And we weren't sure. We stayed up there overnight in case they came early in the morning. And first time they didn't come. So we came back and stayed overnight again. And finally they came, and then a latecomer who didn't stay overnight, he came up in the middle of the afternoon, and he said, "Hey, when I was coming up the road," he said that there's a huge Caterpillar front end loader coming. He said, "I think it's coming here." And it was, and the front end loader was coming to move the logs so that they could get in near the house. And so and then also the first thing to come was a guy hauling a huge dumpster, huge commercialized dumpster. And so he parked right on the edge of the property, and we're talking to him. He said, I used to live out on the Eastern Plains. He said, I got evicted out there. He said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be part of this. So he called his boss and told him the situation. The boss says, okay, leave. If that's the way you feel about it, that's fine with me. And so he left, and we're there, and we get the word this front end loader is coming. And then you couldn't see much of the road from where we were. But somebody said, the police are coming, the police are coming. And so we're all out by the road because we've been talking to the truck driver. So police car comes over the hill. Another police car, another one, another. There were about 20 cars came. And we found out later they also, besides all these cars full of policemen, they had an electronics car so they could record any calls when you made and jam. They could hear them, but nobody else could hear them. They couldn't be transmitted, so they all came. We go, oh my God! And
there was a lot of them.
Oh yeah, I don't know, 20, 30, and it was not just the county sheriffs. It was, what I found out later, it was the Tri-County SWAT team. And so they all jump out of their cars and they come running kind of across where we were, and we were starting to run back to the house. We had different jobs we were going to do. My job was going to be, we were one of the doors. The four of us were going to get in front of the door and lock arms, keep them from getting in that door. And the cops started yelling, "Get back, get back." And I said, wait a minute, I've been up here 4 days, and I'm going to retreat in 20 seconds. And so I was just standing there, and then and most of the people ran away or dropped to the ground. And somebody yelled, "Get the old guy, get the old guy." And so these two guys with assault rifles come to me. So I just held out my arms. I wasn't going to fight cops. There's no point in that. And so they put me on the ground and they restrained me with ties behind my back. And I'm laying there and I said, "Hey, could you guys sit me up?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." These guys were real friendly. And so they sat me up so I could see what was going on. And, these guys, they had Army fatigues. They had semi-automatics, weapons. They were all fairly young and buff. I mean, these guys looked like they could be in a crack unit in Iraq or someplace like that. And so we're sitting there for, I don't know what all they had to do for about, there were some people out in the woods. That's how we knew that they were coming, because these guys had gone out as scouts in the woods and down by the lower portion of the road. And then a few of them came running back to tell us. That's how we knew the cops were coming. But they knew there were more people in the woods, and they were scared as hell about those people. They thought they might be armed, I guess. So this thing went on till they were sure nobody was left in the woods. And then somebody says, "Cut the old guy loose." And that didn't sit well with me. Old guy, I'm a war hero here. I'm not an old guy. So these armed guys came. They picked me up, and they had it was a pair of sheet metal shears, and they clipped the ties. And then one of whoever was running this operation came up. They said, "You okay? You're not hurt, are you?" I said, "Oh, no." And later I said, "Oh, that was really stupid. The only reason he asked you that was so you can't make a complaint against him later." So
Sounds pretty scary, Fred.
It really was. It really wasn't that. Then later, well, we had to wait a while. Our car was that I had come up with my friend Janet and a few other people. We had parked by the house, so we had to wait till the logs were cleared, and they were. It was two guys there with chainsaws that were. I was told they were county foresters, and so they cut up all these dead trees that we had dragged in the thing, and then the front loader moved them out of the way, and then the cops said, "Well, you get in your car now and you drive down off this road down right by the main road," which we did. Well, there was there were SWAT members from a different county were controlling this place down by the road. And the original guys that we ran across that I said looked like they could have been in Iraq were totally different. The guys down by the road they must have been from a different county. They were all old and lumpy. They didn't have spiffy fatigues. I don't think they had the same kind of weapons. And so later I surmised that the first group they'd been trained and outfitted by the federal government, and this other county, they weren't in the program. That's why the big difference. And um, you could tell they were scared. And up by the house, they had tons of people. And they only had a few people down by the road. I could tell they were very scared. And then the people I was in, a lot of them were young and stupid, or some of them old and stupid, and they're provoking these guys. The few guys down there, and I go, oh God. One of these guys gets really scared. He's like, you shoot somebody. And then there was one guy, at that point, the front end loader was still down there. And they rev up the engine to take it up the hill. This guy jumps in the bucket. And then another guy, I don't know, he might have wrestled with a cop or something. He did something, I don't know, but nobody got arrested and taken in, but two guys got citations to appear.
And you didn't get arrested, right?
No.
So Fred, tell me about the Romero Troop. What is being in the Romero Troop meant to you?
Well, right now the big thing of it is that it's my main form of activism at the moment.
It's activism. How is it activism?
It's getting the word out. It's getting our beliefs out, and it's most of the audience. It's people we've worked with, people we've told their stories, and it's they don't come to see polished theater, although sometimes we do produce, I think, really good theater. They come to see people telling their stories. And so they need these people that they're people that have suffered in one way or another, sometimes just incredibly much. And they have a strong need to hear their stories. And so that's the value of what we're doing.
Can you tell me, maybe just give me one story about being in the Romero Troop that you're particularly attached to, or you remember, just...
Well, how about, this was when we were doing, you're the woman, or you're the person that started this story, I think, when we were doing the bus ride through Denver, and various people, I was a bus driver one time, and people were complaining about all the gentrification in Denver, and it's pretty intense now, but it's been going on. At least when I got here, it had a really nice, small town feel, but I could tell right away it's ending. It's going to go away. It's going to become a small, big city, and it's not going to have that nice small town feel anymore. And so people are all complaining about that stuff. And then it occurred to me, what? We're bitching about trivial stuff, and compared to what happened to the original occupiers of this land.
And who are those?
They were Native Americans. They were. We pay tribute to them a lot of times. The Utes, Cherokees, and Utes. Tell me the other one. What's the other?
Arapaho, Cheyenne.
Oh, Cheyenne, not Cherokee. Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Utes.
And other tribes, but those were the main.
Yeah,
tribes.
those are the main ones. But no, they're that used it sometimes and traveled through this area is maybe it's up to, I don't know, 15 or 20 groups.
But I remember that scene on the bus route. I mean, like, I was making a big deal about the gentrification of Denver, and you kind of like put me on my ass and said like.
Well, I didn't mean that as an attack.
No,
so much as I thought, wait a minute, this is was something before I became an activist, never would have occurred to me. But it's like our problems are trivial.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't take it as an attack. I took it as a wake-up moment.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah, it was amazing, Fred.
Well, we make each other. We wake each other up. That's an important part of the Romero troop.
Yeah. And how long you been in with the troop?
I'm not good with dates. I don't know. 4 years?
Somewhere between 4 and 20.
Yeah, okay, that'll cover it.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's just leave it there, Fred. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for asking me for my story.
Yeah, Fred, love you, brother.
Love you.